everybody. Welcome back to Flip Your Mindset. I'm your host, Stacey Uhrig, and today we're going to be doing a solo cast. I've been writing a lot of content lately for things like Brains Magazine, for a blog, for social media content, and I'm even thinking about doing a Substack, though I haven't dove into that yet. But I wrote an article this morning about the Let Them theory by Mel Robbins, and I just thought this could be really powerful content for the listeners. So I want to get right into it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts. So if you listen to this podcast episode and you have a comment or a suggestion, or you want to share something with me, please, please, please reach out to me. Go right to my website. It's flipyourmindset.com. You can email me right from my contact page. I would love to hear your feedback on this, or drop comments right here wherever you listen to your cast. So I recently wrote an article for Brains Magazine, and I called it "Why I'm Careful to Recommend the Let Them Theory to My Clients." It's a trauma care practitioner's perspective. And I wrote it because I do have a lot of thoughts about the book. You know, I try really hard to read as much as I can every single year in between clients and speaking and lifing and being a mom. And I set a goal for 2025 to read more books. And it's not going to be that hard because I only read 4 during 2024. My favorite, by the way, being Break the Cycle by Dr. Marielle Bouquet. So on January 1st, I decided to kick it off with cracking open the Let Them theory. And I was excited. I have followed Mel. Yes, I call her Mel. I think we're on a first name basis in my head for years. I've seen her speak live 5 separate times. I've always appreciated her no nonsense, practical approach to personal growth. It's really very similar to the way that I approach my clients. So when I saw that she had this new book, I knew I had to dive in. And, you know, in my practice, I work with people stuck in some really deeply ingrained patterns that are very universal. Things that show up like people pleasing and boundary setting issues and the need for external validations. And I had heard enough about the Let Them theory to be curious. And I was wondering if something as simple as letting someone or let them could help break these patterns. So I want to help you understand the Let Them theory and then tell you why I might have a hard time recommending it to my clients. So at its core, the Let Them theory is about relinquishing control. Okay. It's the control of others, people's choices, people's behaviors, their reactions to things. The idea, the theory is a really liberating concept. We've all been there. We've all stressed over why someone can't change. And we all bend over backwards to accommodate people, or we feel frustrated when they don't meet our expectations. And Mel really challenges this mindset by presenting people with a really simple alternative, which is just to let them, in addition to let me. So instead of trying to manipulate outcomes or force relationships to fit our needs, the idea is that we can let people just be who they are and focus on what we can control, which is us. So that's the let me piece. It's we can control our responses, our boundaries, our emotional well-being. And it's not about giving up on people or giving up on relationships or being apathetic. It's really, truly about accepting that attempts to control other people doesn't end well, right? Attempts to control other people lead to frustration. It leads to resentment. It leads to burnout, which, you know, I talk about all the time. And letting them isn't about losing control. It's about reclaiming our personal peace. So that obviously really resonates with me. But I want to talk about where it falls short. So this concept is not just powerful, it can be super duper empowering. And I'll be honest, it is the way I live my life, which is why I resonated so well with the book. But I've also done 40 years, that's 4 decades worth of personal healing. Okay. So the concept is powerful. It's empowering. It shifts the focus from external control, what we can control outside of us, to internal empowerment. It really reinforces healthy emotional boundaries, and it encourages us to invest energy where it truly matters, which is within ourselves. So for a lot of people, the shift can be very life-changing, very, very transformative, because instead of agonizing over why someone maybe cancels plans, we just simply let them. Or instead of trying to fix a partner's bad habits, we just let them. Or we stop controlling people's actions Everything is about them and it's not about you. Your job is to decide what you want to do with the information that you see in front of you. But as I read, what I kept saying to myself is, well, what about the people with complex trauma? And I was looking for it in the book and I kept reading and I'm like, is she going to address it? And here's what I know to be true. For those people who have experienced complex trauma during their developmental years, so let's call it developmental trauma, we see things like extreme people pleasing or difficulty setting boundaries and this deep need for validation. They're not just habits that can easily be broken. They are survival mechanisms. Okay. So when people have developmental trauma, their nervous systems are wired to scan for threat. They're wired to scan for threat to avoid abandonment, and they're constantly seeking approval, and they'll do it at any cost. So telling somebody with developmental trauma or complex PTSD to just let them is literally like telling somebody with a broken leg to just walk it off. The concept of the book is solid, but the application requires a much more profound healing process first. So I want to help someone that's either reading the book or considering reading the book bridge the gap from a trauma-informed lens, right? Or in my case, trauma-focused, trauma-trained. So this is where my trauma-focused work comes in. And the types of modalities that I use that are trauma-focused are things like parts work that are inspired by internal family systems and polyvagal theory, or rapid transformational therapy, which I learned with Marissa Peer. When I use these trauma-focused therapeutic models, I guide my clients through understanding and integrating their protective parts. So we're all made up of lots of parts, including a self-energy. And we all walk with parts that feel responsible for keeping the peace. And a lot of my clients also have protective parts that are responsible for earning love or maintaining control in safety. So by addressing those survival responses under the hood, right? So subconsciously, which is what I do with my hypnosis and the RTT work I do, I can help somebody shift their focus inward and release the need to control others and build a healthier emotional set of boundaries. When someone has unresolved trauma, letting them is not a mindset shift. It's a nervous system shift. I'm going to repeat that again. For someone with unresolved trauma, specifically developmental trauma or complex PTSD, letting them is not a mindset shift. It's a complete nervous system shift. Before healing, letting go can feel really unsafe. It can feel like abandonment or rejection. But once the deeper work is being done or is being worked through, letting them can be something we're working towards. It can become second nature because it's no longer triggers a survival response. Achieving this let them mindset isn't about deciding to think differently. That's, I think, the piece that I'm trying to get at for you, because you can't just turn that survival mechanism off. So it's not just about deciding to think differently. It's about healing the beliefs and the unhealed wounds that make control feel necessary in the first place. I'm just going to let that sit right there. It's about healing the beliefs and the unresolved wounds that make control feel necessary and required for survival, right? So if you identify with that, and if you identify as an extreme people pleaser, this concept will not just resonate, it's going to bring a little bit of a sense of relief. Before we can let them, we need to examine the deeper patterns driving someone's behavior to control. These kinds of behaviors, by the way, can lead to really dysfunctional relationship dynamics. So when we're trying to control outcomes, we find ourselves in codependency or in enmeshment or constantly seeking external validation, right? And these things we know often stem from unresolved, unhealed childhood wounds. When we grow up believing that our worth is tied to our ability to fix a situation or to be a savior in a situation, we naturally fall into relationships that reinforce those roles. This is why the let them theory can feel like both a relief and an impossible task at the same time, because letting go of control requires unlearning deeply ingrained beliefs about love, safety, and acceptance. That's the work. However, If you're trying to read the let them theory and you feel like you're hitting yourself up against the wall, that's a really good sign that there's work to be done. Because when you can address those core wounds, you can move from relationships rooted in control and anxiety to ones that are built on mutual respect, autonomy, and actual genuine connection. The let them theory then becomes more than just a phrase. It can become a way of living, and it can be very, very freeing. So here are some of the real powerful takeaways from Mel's book. Number one, boundaries are essential. So again, if we have unhealed wounds that make it very difficult to put boundaries down, this is where the work's going to be done, because letting others make their own choices means protecting your own emotional well-being, which can be very hard for a lot of people. The second key takeaway is we're not responsible for other people's actions. So it's that releasing control. Releasing control doesn't mean we're abandoning relationships. It means that we respect people's autonomy. And the third big takeaway I hope you all take from this, if you do read the book or if you do listen to this podcast, is healing makes all of this possible. If letting go feels impossible, it's likely tied to these unresolved wounds. So the first step isn't just trying harder, but understanding why control feels so required and so necessary. There was a quote from the book that I really loved, and that quote was, letting them be isn't losing control, it's gaining freedom. Letting them be isn't losing control, it's gaining freedom. And honestly, in the nutshell, that is the heart of the book. So there's a lot of different practical applications to this book. You can apply the let them theory in a lot of real life, simple and yet challenging scenarios. Number one, parenting. And I love the section on parenting. And my biggest takeaway from that is let your child make mistakes, people. Let them. Let your kid make mistakes. Let them learn instead of micromanaging every decision. If you have been a client of mine and we've talked about parenting, you know I am right in alignment with that. Another practical applications in friendships or in coworker situations, you can let someone else's behavior reflect their priorities. And it doesn't mean it has to do with you. When we personalize things is when we get stuck. So instead of taking it personally, we want to depersonalize. The third is in romantic relationships, releasing this urge to fix other people or to fix your partner and to focus on your own growth instead could be very liberating. Here's the thing I want you to take away. This is not about disengaging or avoiding conflict. It's about consciously choosing where to put your energy. And you want to put your energy into relationships that reflect your values. So here are my final thoughts. The Let Them theory is great. It's a good book. It's a powerful framework for emotional freedom and healthier relationships. But for those with trauma histories, embracing that mindset can often require a deeper healing first. So the next time you try to find yourself trying to fix or manage or control someone's actions, I want you to ask yourself, what am I afraid will happen if I stop trying to control this? Because the answer might surprise you, and more importantly, it could set you free. Now, here's a little side note as I wrap this up. After I read the book, I must be on like a newsletter feed or something for Mel, and like with the other gabillion people in the world. And I got it. And I thought, well, for shits and giggles, I'm going to reply to this like blanket, newsletter email. And I basically sent it and I said, I don't know if Mel's going to get this or not, but I did send Mel an email to share these insights that I'm sharing here in the podcast that I shared in the article. I obviously haven't heard back from her. I don't really expect to hear back from her, but I did want to share my thoughts with her because my goal always is to broaden the message and reach as many people as possible. And I was very curious if she had taken some of the things that I talk about with regards to complex PTSD into consideration when she was writing the book. So here's the ask. If anybody here is listening and you know Mel, go tell her to check her inbox. So I want you guys... Thank you so much for listening. I hope that it resonated with you. I try to keep this under 15 minutes as just a quick little hit when you're driving to and from work, you're driving to and from pickup, or you're driving to and from an appointment. I hope that this resonated. If it did, please contact me. I would love to hear back from you. And as in all the other days, I just hope that you find healing within your heart. Have a great day.